Welcome to the Life of a Marketer podcast. And today's guest is Perryn Olson. Perryn, as usual, I'm going to allow you to introduce yourself. Tell us about who you are and what it is that you do.
Yeah, thanks, Jared. So I'm Perryn Olson, the Chief Marketing Officer at Rex.one, which is the parent brand for three companies, actually, with Rex Construction, Rex Engineering, and Rex Technology. And under Rex Technology, we acquired a company called Superdroid Robots about 2 years ago. So I lead our small marketing design team. We try to do as much as we can in-house and run the marketing team much like an agency, because that was my background. Started a small brand marketing design firm and did a lot of little clients and kind of grew a niche in construction marketing and tech, and kind of grew from there and went on the internal side. It's about 8 years ago, and really enjoyed kind of seeing the depths and the details and things like that. And not having kind of do the feed the machine of business development, constantly trying to do that on the agency side. Really, but like the multiple brands, it's one of the reasons I came to Rex 3 years ago, is to build out multiple brands. So all in all, those three companies have about 7 brands, and actually just launching a joint venture this week. So
Oh, wow. Wow. Awesome. That sounds cool. And the
yeah,
construction company that you're working with, what kind of construction do they do?
uh, general construction is what's considered. So they're managing anything from multifamily complexes or mixed use, which has a little of everything: retail, residential, office space. Also do a lot of light industrial, like distribution centers, warehouses, things like that.
Awesome. Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. So
Yeah.
for you, what's been the best thing about being in the marketing industry?
I love just learning about across lots of different industries. When I started in the agency, that was one of the favorite things, was just digging into different industry, learning a little bit more, and kind of become a sponge and a little bit of a minor trivia expert about all these different things. I used to have a client did a lot of asphalt paving. I could tell you all the difference between cold, warm, and hot mixed asphalt, and what temperatures it has set, and all these things. Like, you just kind of get in the weeds of this. And now they're going to be an internal. I dig a little bit deeper into my own brands and things like that. Particularly robots is what I've been focused on the last few years, and I can tell you all kinds of things about robots. Can't build them or program them at this point, but I can help find the right ones for the use cases and the clients, and represent the company at that level. So it's just learning kind of a little bit of everything is really fascinating to me, and then diving into our different clients' use cases and learning about them as we write case studies or just understand how they work and build out buyer personas and things like that.
Yeah, it's amazing how much you learn, and sometimes you tell yourself like,
Yeah.
why don't I start a company in this? Because it's like these people, they don't get it, and it's so easy. It's like taking candy from a baby. And actually,
Yeah.
in December, I started a company for my wife. In So I put my money where my mouth is. So I had a client that,
Yeah.
and I said, well, we can do that too. So I just she's started it. I'm doing all the marketing for it. It's going fantastic so far. So
That's
anyway,
wonderful.
yeah, I definitely agree with you. That is a fun thing. In marketing, is just learning about all sorts of different businesses, and um, yeah, I agree. All right, switching gears a little bit. What sort of advice do you offer to those that are in the marketing industry right now?
Well, because I come up kind of the construction marketing, I always tell people when they're new to that industry is get your boots dirty. And it's get out of the office, go to the job site, see what you do, meet the people. Because I found a lot of people that are in that space, which is technically architect, engineer, construction, that they don't actually understand what they do. If you talk to most people, they ask what an MEP marketer would do. They don't realize it's mechanical, electrical, plumbing, which is all those utilities in the walls or in the rafters, things like that. And until you get in the space and you really get into the job sites and really see what it is, it's hard to understand and how to market and how to position your firm and things like that. So I think it's one of the mistakes a lot of people do, is they don't get out in the field, and that's still transferable outside of construction. When we acquired the robot company a couple years ago, we went on site to see the robots, because one robot company makes a very different one than others. Our team actually makes dozens of different types of robots. So it was really good to get our hands on, drive a few, see what they're used for, feel the durability of them, things like that. And so it's you kind of get hands-on with your product, then also meet the customers is the other big thing. There's this movement with account-based marketing to really understand your customer and not just be trying to mass hit people. I'm a B2B marketer, so I'm usually looking in the dozens of target customers, not millions. I'm not trying to use Super Bowl ads or things like that. So you really have to understand your customers, how they're going to use your service or your product, and then just how that's how you can then help position your company or say those messaging is just get out and understand people and talk to people.
So I want to ask you some questions because I'm fascinated with the construction industry. So I'm gonna add some questions in here.
Yeah.
So construction like how do you it's a B2B type deal.
Yeah.
What kind of strategies and tactics are you guys using to bring in more clientele with marketing in the construction arena?
So in construction, the old school is the slow bid. You work more government and you're just trying to put the lowest number on the bid and hope you win it. That's really been phasing out every decade. You have less and less projects that are like that. And those are still a little bit more road construction, sewer, things like that. But that's still kind of phasing out where you're building more relationships. So if you want to go build the next headquarters for a company or their new warehouses or work with a developer that build out their next few different properties, you've got to get to know them. And it's very similar you'd see in other professional services. I'm actually part of a member of Society of Marketing Professional Services, or SMPS, which is very focused on that architect, engineer, construction, but it's very transferable. For a while, I worked in IT, and a lot of the skills I learned at SMPS, it was focused on the build industry, worked over in IT, accounting, legal, where you're just trying to build these relationships with people. And one of the things that's interesting about the build community is there's so much just kind of companies working together. Of you need an architect, multiple different engineers like structural and MEP and civil and geotechnical, and then you need the construction. You don't have a general contractor or a construction manager, and you have dozens of different trade partners or subcontractors. So just to build like a 5-story office building takes easily 50 companies. So there's just a lot of knowledge and sharing that you're doing, but also you're sometimes teaming up with somebody in the next week or the next project, you're teaming with a totally different team, which also makes it more complicated as well on the operations side. But that's really how a building gets built. And so sometimes you're not always chasing the end client. You might, if you're a construction company or engineer, you're not just chasing the real estate developer or the building owner, you're chasing the architect. So it's a little different. Most engineers actually go after architects, not actually the end user.
Interesting. And so what are you using to go after the architects?
LinkedIn, other tools that find to kind of identify who those people are. You really want to develop out your personas, and then kind of your demographics, your firmographics, what you're looking for, and see who would be a good fit. And then kind of, I'm a big believer in account-based marketing, which starts with that ideal client profile, and you build out some type of either scoring matrix or formula that you would score out people and then make these your top priority or tier 1, and then kind of tier 2 and 3 and so on. And then you research them and understand where they're coming from, where they've been, what they're trying to do, and try to align yourself with the right ones. You're almost qualifying them before they have a chance to qualify you. And it's you should be calling up, say, hey Jared, I've done my homework on you. I see you guys do this, this, and this. It aligns really well with what we've done and what we're good at. I think is it worth a 30-minute conversation? And sometimes it just starts from there and then to build trust. But the big thing is it's generally very long cycle, relationship driven, not necessarily one transaction. So that's one of the big shifts that you see in B2B is I might not be trying to get with one client to go build a $5 or $10 million building. I want to go get with a real estate developer to build his next 25 to $10 million buildings.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think there's a strategy that, I'm sure you've heard of this, to make your list of your top 100 clients.
Yeah.
And then, send them gifts, send them,
yeah.
Even try to go in person with it, that kind of thing. I think that in that kind of situation, that would really be something that serves well, especially when you've got $1 million projects on the line. It's definitely worth it to take the time to do that. And I bet not many companies take the time to do that.
No, there's still this kind of old school mentality of, I don't need a website. I don't need social media. I think we're kind of past the I don't need a website phase. There's a guy I've started following on LinkedIn. He's kind of constantly fighting this battle that people think contractors don't need social media. And I just kind of laugh because that was the battle I had when I was in the agency. I was specialized in construction marketing and we did a lot of websites. And sometimes we're trying to convince the owner that they need a website. And it was very interesting. It was just, they're kind of this, I've done it this way for my whole life. And they would sometimes give it to the next generation was coming up the ranks, understood the power of websites and just the digital presence of a company, and literally heard multiple CEOs companies, well, it's just marketing. They can't screw up the company too bad. And you're just like cringe, but you understand what they're naive. But multiple times I had CEOs of companies call me a month or two after a website launch, and they're like, we're getting leads off our website. I'm like, yeah. We're getting all these qualified applicants. We never got qualified applicants for them. Yeah, your old website scared them away. And it was kind of tongue in cheek. Somebody would tell me before, it was, kid, because I've been in this industry 20 years. They would tell me, kid, we don't sell buildings on our website. We're not Amazon. I'm like, I know, but you lose buildings off your website all the time. And they don't understand that until they actually put together a decent website that actually doesn't scare people away. It at least attracts them enough to give them a phone call or things like that. So it's great when companies call in, or fill out a website form, and it's a great qualified client that found you. Those are even easier to do than you calling them. It's one of the hardest things in this space is trying to figure out who. There's a company of 2,000 people. Who's the decision maker? And most likely, it's 10 people. There's a lot of stats in there. In B2B sales, it's around 7 point something decision makers that you're constantly talking around that selection committee, and it can be anyone. It's really hard. So you kind of find your way in with the robots. Some industries, safety is a great way in because the robots help get people out of the dangerous situations, and sometimes that's a horrible place to start because they want to keep status quo. They don't want to replace people, and it's like we're not replacing people, we're just getting them out of harm's way. There's still a human operating this robot. So you got to kind of find which niche or which, what industry, and know that industry really well to figure out. And sometimes you're just trying it. You try one thing and it doesn't work, and you pivot to the next one. One of the things we're even seeing, and specifically with the robots, is certain industries we're in, like construction or manufacturing, starting to do it as well, is they have a specific technologist on staff that kind of sits between IT, operations, and accounting. Their job's either to make the company more money or save the company money. And they're not IT anymore. They're not operations, and they're out there trying to look for the latest tech that they can go and implement. And they're kind of just tinkerers. So it's trying to find who is this person, and they don't generally have the title technologist. They have these kind of random titles. So it's really hard to find them sometimes.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing all that. It's fascinating. That's a fascinating world to work in, and you're brave for doing it, especially after hearing about the CEOs that don't think they need a website. I think that's hilarious.
Well, it's they're naive. I mean, I get it. They've been very successful for a long time. I mean, sometimes we're talking to companies that are $500 million, $1 billion year company that really has had no website presence until 10 years ago. I actually did some consulting last year with a very large contractor, and their version of marketing was essentially just proposal writing. They're constantly churning out proposals. They had a 4-person marketing team, but every one of them was doing a proposal a week, essentially. They're just that large and had that much work to do. And I was like, you guys have never seen proactive marketing. That was the term we started using internally, proactive marketing. All the things that you guys keep saying you want to get to when there's kind of a lull in proposals, and that lull doesn't really ever happen. So it's amazing how big companies can get just essentially, riding that proposal train. It's very common in construction.
Interesting. Fascinating. All right. We're going to switch gears.
Yeah.
Try to keep the podcast short. All right. What other successful people in marketing like yourself would you like to acknowledge that should be on the podcast?
That's tough because that SMPS group I told you about, I've learned so much from that. I've made the transition from a designer to a brand strategist years ago. Realized I was a much better kind of natural marketer and enjoyed it more than I was a designer, and made that switch, got certified with the association, just became a fellow last year with SMPS. But the one that comes to mind is actually Lindsay Diven out of Florida. She has her own podcast and is very focused on kind of training that entry level person that's an AEC, and they're trying to get out of that proposal. Some people call it the proposal hell or proposal black hole, and how to get in that more proactive. And she's just really covers the gambit of that. But I'm happy to make an introduction with her. She's wonderful to talk to. I've been a podcast on her, or a guest on her podcast. Seen her present many times in person, things like that.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate that. Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. We'll definitely be looking her up. All right. One more question, just for fun. Tell me the oldest technology you remember using.
Commodore 64. So that was the first computer I had at school, the first computer we had at home with the floppy disk and everything. So Yeah, Commodore 64 is definitely the first one.
The Commodore 64.
Yeah,
Did you play
early 80s.
any games on it?
Boulder Dash and Frogger were the games on there. So I
Frogger?
Frogger and Boulder Dash. So I still have that burned in my memory because it's the same thing over and over. So,
Yeah, that game is addictive though. I could still play that game. It's very
yeah,
why? It's just like you want to keep playing it. It's so stupid, but um
yeah, simple. Mm,
yeah, so we've had that answer before. And but
good.
we've had, as you can imagine, some really strange answers from some of the older people mentioned transistor radio being the oldest thing
Yeah,
there. We've had all sorts of, different kinds of early computers that someone mentioned one last time that was like, um, I had never even heard of it before. But it was, like green, the cursor, and it was just the MS-DOS prompt.
yeah. No, that was the Commodore was a blue screen, I think. So
Yeah,
I remember when Dad brought home like a green screen one from work at one point, and it was like it was essentially mainframe, but it's no, the Commodore was the one I remember the most. I was in kindergarten when I was using it, and it was really my first, at-home computer. But we also had them at school, and the giant keyboards and the dot matrix printers with like the sides you got to tear off. Like it, kids are spoiled nowadays. They don't know how good they really have it. I think I was blessed to kind of grow up with technology and not be overwhelmed by it to an extent.
that's true. That's true. It's crazy now. Just crazy. There's always something new coming out. So it's zany,
Oh yeah,
just unbelievable. I always say it's an interesting time to be alive. There's always something new all the time.
oh yeah. And it's curious, what our kids, like our grandkids, have to deal with technology, where like the HoloLens or the new Apple Vision Pro, like is the norm.
Right. Yeah. Like imagine people couldn't even conceive of the Apple Vision Pro about 30
Yeah.
years ago. Like the very idea of that was like something from
Oh yeah.
the Jetsons or something like that.
Yeah.
But now it's
Yep.
here.
Yep.
All right. Well, yeah, we're gonna close now. Perrin, it's been great to have you on. I really thought it was a great podcast. I learned a lot about the construction industry, and marketing construction industry, which I really appreciate. Everybody, you can catch our podcast on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 11 something. You can subscribe to us on YouTube, and you'll see it whenever it gets released. If you want to subscribe to the email list, it's Jared, my name, Jared, at hiveleadmarketing.com. Hive is in beehive. Lead is in like a lead that comes into your business. And you can just email me there. I can add you to our list as well. If not, we stream it on social media, so you can always catch us across a number of social media profiles. Once again, Perrin, thanks for participating in the podcast. Everybody, make sure you like and subscribe. Thank you.